You sounded great.
Yeah, right.
What? You telling me you weren't feeling it? You were in it. We don't need to put them all out.
I know, but we just need to film.
Your hearing is deteriorating rapidly.
We'll come back. Till then, Lou, we just keep going, okay?
No.
Lou,
No.
let's play tomorrow. Let's see what it's like, okay? I'm gonna be like a click track. You can play to me.
You have to understand, your first responsibility is to preserve the hearing you have.
I can't hear you. Do you understand me? I can't. I'm deaf. I'm deaf.
Hello and welcome to the Soundworks Collection video series. I'm Michael Coleman, and today we're going to chat with supervising sound editor Nikolai Becker, who worked on the new film from Amazon Studios, Sound of Metal. This film is about Ruben, a drummer who recently lost his hearing and has to figure out how he wants to navigate his new life. I'm really excited to talk with Nikolai today and discuss how he crafted the sonically silent world that Ruben and the audience will explore. So Nikolai, to start off, I'd love to understand, when you first found out about this film and the story, how did you imagine the world of Ruben?
My first idea was to go to something very naturalistic. So the idea is that we try to actually understand physically from the people who had this experience, what was the inner feeling, like the body feeling of it. So we try not to do something very illustrative, but we try to put the people in this kind of similar condition. Because I think that the body is, for me, I always try to work in that way. When I was doing for example, the Foley for Gravity also, it was everything about the same kind of idea. What's happening in the suit, what we can hear. So maybe there is air inside of the suit, maybe there is contact. So we start to work with solid sounds. So I always start to put me in kind of real condition. So when I met Darius for the first time, I bring him in an anechoic chamber in Paris. So we stay there for maybe 1 hour, in pure silence, to experience the inner sound, because you can't hear anything. So it's most of what you're hearing is actually you feel it through your body. You hear your tendons, you hear your heart, your blood pressure, and so on. So we try to work in that way, and when he's actually starting to put the implants, cochlear implants, we also had a lot of information from the people who had this experience, but the people who became deaf, so they remember how to describe sound, and so they were able to explain with sonic vocabulary, how it was. So we really try to really rebuild that things from reality, like from, instead of going directly to kind of musical or like very sound effect, like sound design stuff, we really try to be very simple in a way, and everything was not so much about the sound, but how to actually play with the picture editing and the sound editing, So what was very important, it was not about, because if each time you are in his point of view, you're doing like the mute effect. It's not working like that. So what was great, it's like I had the chance to have a very strong collaboration with a picture editor. So we spent a lot of time to try to find the right balance. We actually removed some sequence. We had some new, some sequence just to find the right balance, because everything was about that, If it's too much, if you're like going, you are point of views and outs and point of views and out, it can be very tiring. And so we really spent a lot of time to try to figure out in the whole film how to balance that effect. And I think that that's the biggest work was that, in fact, how to actually the structure of it during the film.
Were you able to have a lot of conversation with your production sound mixer, Philippe? Did you find that you were going to be utilizing production audio more than you usually would, because you're kind of articulating the on-set sound in a way that, and then processing it, or what was the combination of production audio and?
First, what I'm doing when I work on a film, I always come to the set. Most of the time, the project I'm working with, I'm starting before the shooting, so we can have a talk with the producer and the director about how we're gonna to have a kind of plan, trying to understand how we can actually help the process. So, for example, we actually create a device for Riz Ahmed. We put him in. He had a I don't know how you call it, like in-ear monitor, which were from the production sound, the main microphone from the production sound, and we have different state of alteration. So during the shooting, he was able to actually feel, sonically what was happening, the deterioration of the of the sound. So he didn't kept it for the whole sequence, but each time we were trying to put him, physically in that kind of thing. And I think that after the proprioceptivity of the body, learned. So it was not so much about acting, but just really like kind of keep this feeling, we try to mimic for him to put him in the right positioning, So we did that, and we did that also after at the end when he also has the implant. We did the same, So we really try to put him in a condition, and we knew that also what was very important from the start, that you can believe to the story. So something which seems not very important, but for us, which is really, really, really important, is to really believe that they were musicians, both of them, So as you can see on the first sequence, they play live, and they practice for 6 months every day to be able to do the gig, like such a performance. And we didn't want to have playback, or we didn't want to have clicks, because we really want the people to feel that even the first sequence is 100% diegetic, which is put the audience in the idea that everything is real.
I was gonna ask you, because the first time he has that hearing test, it's an incredible reality of is this going to be the future of his life? And it also sets the stage, I feel like, of the sound of his world from his perspective. Whenever we are in his head and experiencing it through it, it's a very distinctive experience. So how important was it to establish this initial hearing test? Because that's going to obviously be revisited throughout the film.
I think that's, for me, it's really like the work of Darius, because like I would say, like, as a script writer, he was very, very he took a lot of attention to that, to put to the I don't know, the story.
Subtitle or the story?
Yeah, you speak about sorry, I'm French, so sometimes
it's all right. Yeah.
I might misunderstand something. So yeah. Yes, you were speaking about the subtitles and how it's translate. No, not really. Sorry.
Oh no, just really more so of the sound of him, with his hearing loss. Yeah.
What can I say? We after we we put microphone on his chest. We put microphone also contact mics. We also did a lot of recording in an anechoic chamber of his bracing. So we worked a lot with him, and he was so into it. So he was so intense into that role. So you can feel that. But after, it's sometimes you think later about what you have done, but it was like actually what was very specific also, that the subject was so important for Darius, that actually we did the sound design together. So I said to him, I want you to be with me all the time, because it's not, I don't want to be like a kind of professional and saying like, I'm gonna give you everything you need, don't come to the studio, you're
Right,
gonna be
yeah,
happy. It was really like a very strong collaboration. So I can say that between Mickey, the picture editor, me and Darius, it was a very close collaboration. So after, you don't remember exactly who has done what, but it was really what was very important, that's how we work together, because and that's what I like to work on a small scale film, like independent film, because you have the kind of human scale, so you don't have like 30 people or 40 people, so you can really actually work with the director, work with the editor.
Yeah, the collaboration. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
right.
very, very closely.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what was very, for me, what the most amazing on this work. It was like how we actually moved in the work all together.
That's great. One of the beautiful scenes, which is kind of a reality, check for Ruben, is when he joins the community and he's gonna be introduced to his new life, and he sits down and he starts eating, with this deaf community, and they're communicating through sign language, and you can kind of see where he is and where they are in terms of their progression of being now, with all the hearing loss. So what was the combination of mixing reality of really what it's like to be deaf and a movies, because it seems that it's just like almost like a high pass or like a low pass filter, like you really only hear like the really low end, or like you don't really make out the words. It's like very muffled. So yeah, how real is that?
It's because I think it's something we same thing. What I mean, it's a bit like an extension of what I start to do with Gravity. It's more about the Solidian aspect. It's more about if you actually somewhere and you have no hearing, you can still feel a lot of vibration, all the low frequency and the low mid frequency on your body. So I think it was, and actually I have a friend which are developing a device for the hearing impaired people to be able to listen to music, and it's totally reconstruct the scale of music, but in a very small spectrum from low mid to very low frequency, and to permit them to actually feel, and listen and understand music, So the idea was to put everything, in the low or low mid frequency, which is exactly what's happening, And I mean, you can. It's also something very, very. When you are underwater, and that's something you can feel. Of course, there is a specific acoustic you have underwater, but anyway, when you are in a bath or in a swimming pool, you can feel the sound, and we try to figure out about this kind of sensation, feelings, unique feelings.
Yeah, one of the amazing scenes also is when he visits this school, and he is interacting with these children who are also similar situation, of hearing loss, and some are deaf, but he plays piano, and it's about like feeling feeling the vibration.
Sure. We had another scene with balloon, because there's people used to actually feel music through balloons, because the balloons are vibrate, and so you can put your hands on the balloon and feel, feel the sound through the balloon. So everything which is a resonate, and you touch it, you can actually hear. I mean, your brain is able to reconstruct something, with it, So it was a great idea from Darius, also because it's also inspired from reality. That's what a lot of kids are actually have this kind of experience where they go to specific school.
That's awesome. One of the other beautiful scenes, maybe you can set this up, is when they're interacting with the slide. How did that scene come about, and then was it written in the sense to kind of lead into the sound experience that it is?
It was, and actually what is funny is that there is another aspect which is a more musical aspect, but it's linked to that because to do the music with the brother of Darius, Ebe, Abraham Marder, we actually choose to use the sound, to mix the sound from to use the sound from the first gig, the concert, but also to mix it with like very, very specific weird instruments, which are called structure bachet, which are like very strange instruments from the 450s, which are like huge metal sheets, and they are linked to a crystal bar, and so you put water on your fingers and you're able to play, and so that's also it's sound of metal, of course, So the idea of the slide also came because before the shooting, I show to Darius this kind of instrument. So he start to think, oh, it could be like a slide, could be like a kind of extension, and so actually we use this instrument to do the sequence, So the sound of the slide is not coming from real sound; it's actually made with this metal instruments.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, something that we didn't have a chance to talk about in the beginning is your background is also being a Foley artist. You have an incredible amount of experience, working on a lot of incredible films. I mean, just looking back, I mean, some of my favorites from Arrival and Ex Machina, and I just feel like what an amazing tool set to have as a sound designer, sound supervisor, sound editor, any person who's doing any creative sound work, because the job of a Foley artist is to take sounds that are not directly associated with what, maybe the sound really is on screen and make it work. So what can you say about taking your Foley experience background and applying it to this?
I mean, for me, the work of Foley and also the field recording are the most important things for me because I spent like 25 years to do like Foley, and I spent like the last 10 years to actually create a lot of sound material for other sound designers. So my idea, I was going in a studio, music studio, and I was putting like maybe 20 different microphones and a lot of equipment, a lot of props. And my goal was to put a headphone and dig into the sound, and to also have this interaction between my body and the sound which were produced. So it's something very seminal for me, this kind of the idea of producing sound and have your body engage, to the process, and also working with this idea of memory because you listen to a sound and you try to remember that this sound you have done it with this prop, mixing with this and using this microphone on contact with this, so and same things for same thing when I edit the atmosphere, for films. I like 99% of the atmosphere I edit in the film, it's atmosphere I've recorded myself. So even in my own process, it's also a lot about the memory of the body, like when I'm editing and I see a sequence, I'm like, oh, I remember I did a recording, So it's not anymore about what you see on the picture, but just like the feeling or a mood, which I actually link to a moment in your life where you have recorded that or you have done this sound or so everything is very yes, it's very personal, in a way.
That I mean, the what we remind me of is especially like in Arrival, also like obviously the interaction of sound and the texture and the perspective that you're playing for the audience. I feel like you've had an amazing history of working on a lot of films that I think sound is a character. Sound is not just serving the picture to be a function as the movie going experience. It's a huge aspect of the storytelling. So when you found out about this film, what did you want to maybe do and not do? Like, were there any rules or things that I think you've taken from other films that maybe applied for this one?
I think because everything is based on kind of real memory, instead of trying to use only the, let's say, the usual cinematographic vocabulary, I really try to dig into reality. If I'm doing a film underwater, I'm gonna spend like 2 or 3 weeks underwater. If I'm doing a film about birds, I'm gonna speak with ornithologists. I'm gonna go to certain forests to try to capture. So everything is very. I'm not able to some, like, I have a lot of friends that they're using libraries, and it's more like a functional work, So I need a cat. They look for cats. They put a cat. So me, I'm working in a very different ways. So I'm that's try. I think that's why I think people try to, and I do believe that reality is an amazing reservoir for finding a lot of amazing ideas, because most of the time, you react on a film through the other film you have seen intersonic wise, and me, I prefer to go and to experience by myself, things. And most of the time, maybe you don't find what you're looking for, but you always find something interesting, So I do believe that yes, like life is for me is the most important reservoir of ideas, So and same thing for when I start to record a lot of Foley, a lot of sounds, people used to record in that way. Me, I straight away I said like, wait a bit. Okay, use a 87, use a 414, but why? So I went to a lot of music studio, and I spoke with a lot of music engineer and musician, and start to understand how I can use different type of preamp, different type of microphone, different type of, So I kind of also, I've been always very interesting to renew also technically the tools, So I did a lot of work in France was to bring a lot of tools from music into the film community, I start to record also a lot with omnidirectional, with ribbon microphone, using a lot of different type of new, not new microphone, but use contact mic, use accelerometers, use geophones, use a lot of different things, and combine all these techniques to actually create something interesting,
That's awesome. There's a beautiful scene when Ruben and his girlfriend Lou, played by Olivia Cook, are at her house, at her parents' house, her father's house, and there's this distorted party chatter, and I just, the experience of it. I mean, I listened and watched the film on headphones, and I felt that like spatially, just like very like it's overwhelming. It's digital, like there's chatter that like doesn't really, you can't articulate anything that's going on, and I thought you guys did a really great job of recreating that experience.
In fact, we did something quite simple, because when I listened to because some audiologists have tried to recreate to model, the cochlear implant sound. So when I listened to it, straight away I felt like, okay, this is looking that with what we can get with Earcam Labs tools, where you actually can separate the transients, the noise, and the harmonic, and work separately on them, then bring them back together. And because I realized that there is delay of treatment, which were very different, and it was reacting. So I found a way that everything seems to be like, like sliding, and nothing is like, it's like you have everything, but nothing is really together. So we actually took all the sound, all the different track, and we actually we process each track each time with these 3 different layers to be able to give the possibility of the re-recording mixer to be able to to be very subtle. After we had a choice, we went through, because it was 2 possibilities. We could have go for mono, because in a way mono is impossibility to be able to get the spatialization, or we can go to a kind of crazy spatialization, which are actually shift all the time. So actually I did both tests for Darius, and he preferred to go for a bit like the more even crazy things, so he decided also at the end that he likes this idea of being lost in space, not only be lost with the material, sonic material, but also lost in space with it.
That's awesome. One of the other kind of aspects of it is the use of subtitles. I just thought from like a story standpoint, it was really interesting, the choice of using subtitles, or just the aspect of allowing the audience to understand what the communication was, and then also like when there's a lack of subtitles. I'm not sure, like when you guys were spotting the film, or were there moments that were obvious that Darius was thinking about when to allow and when to retract information from the audience?
It's funny. It's something we talk also before the shooting, because I did a film called it's A Prayer Before Dawn. It's a film of a story of a guy which in jail in Thailand. So at the start, when he arrived in jail, he don't get anything, and slowly he start to understand, Thai, some word of Thai, and slowly the subtitles are coming, So it's kind of his positioning, So he start to use all the subtitles are corresponding to what he's able to understand, So at the start he can't get anything, and slowly he become more fluent, and he start to read leaves. He start to read, the language, the hand language, and so so it was definitely an idea, a great idea from Darius to also do that and put the audience really in the positioning, like in his positioning, So I think it's nice, because it's also the people have to, the people. It's not like people have to make an effort, People have to be engaged in the film, It's I really like that, in general in film, and I do believe that even if he's a script writer, he also worked with maybe a European, in part a European team, because the DOP is from Holland, because the producer is French also, and me, I was French, because also maybe we have a more like this culture of opacity, of complexity, I think in the American culture, it's very important to be sure that you get everything, like through sound, through music, through dialogue, through, so to be, and that's also the success of the American cinema, to be able to be readable by the entire world. But we had this kind of positioning where we kind of have this positioning to be a bit more obscure, at the start, to be a bit more opaque, and like that the people will have to actually be more engaged in the film, and take and have the like the being with Ruben, in his positioning, in his point of view.
Yeah, one of the things is that you have a music composition credit as a composer. Because once again, it's interesting of, is this sound, is this music, is this Ruben's perspective? Like, what are we hearing? What are we experiencing? So how did you handle the music side of things too?
Actually, that also came from the start when we start to speak about when I start to speak about with Abe, Abraham, the brother, which we are doing the music. I actually present this instrument and the work I was doing because I did the music for this other film, like A Prayer Before Dawn, only with this instrument. And he saw that and he really liked it, and he said like, okay, this is and sound of metal. So they are like metal instruments. They are abstract, They are like orchestral, but they are also not in tune, So they are more like instruments which have been developed for people to be able to play music or create sound without to be an expert. So and for me, I always thought that it's my positioning. Let's say I'm a master with sound, but I have, of course, now I'm working with a lot of musicians all the time, so my knowledge, I have a certain knowledge, but my positioning is really like not about writing the music, but about trying to create organic stuff, more like, so for me to be able to recreate a kind of inner music of his suffering or his brain was very perfect for me, because I think it was a kind of, if it would have been very structured or very easily readable as a music piece, I think it would have been maybe more simple in a way, or too simple, So the idea is that we actually worked with Abe to try to figure out, what was the limit of Of course, I mean, like since 100 years, people say like it's becoming music when the intention is there. It's not about having only using a very complex technique or whatever. But what was important, it has this kind of very strong idea about creating a mental music, inner music. And so we spend a lot of time with Abe to do that. We try many things, and at the end, I have a very good friend, Mario Caltado Jr., which is a producer in LA. He produced a lot of albums of Beastie Boys. Now he's doing Seu George, and also we spend like 2 weeks with him to try also to reuse this material, mix the concert, and also try to find some interesting distortion types for the music. Yeah.
It sounds like you really enjoy the work you do, and you're not afraid to try things that others might be intimidated by.
No, that's why Tim Nielsen always says, I'm like, you're crazy, you're totally crazy, because I always I also do concert. I do like I for me, it's also, I mean, like, that's also because I think I get bored quite easily. So I think that's why I moved from Foley to sound design to sound supervising, now to music, and so for me it's always interesting. Like 2 years ago also I did the 2 albums with Patti Smith, which were very interesting, where I actually did like some weird texture. We worked with Shaman in Mexico. It was very interesting, So I'm always looking for new experience, I'm always looking for of course I love sound. For me it's really like I start to work with sound like 30 years ago, and I still feel like fresh, and like a baby. Sometimes I see young people coming at me and asking me questions. I'm like, why are you asking questions? Normally it's me who asks questions. Because I still have the same curiosity. I think I still want to. So now I'm also working with a lot of interesting people from Stanford University, where we actually develop a lot of tools for augmented instrument for composing. So I did an installation with this musician called Arca, which is in the MoMA now, and we are actually trying to understand what is evolving, because you had like the music. Generative music from the 60s, and now we try to make like evolving music. So we try to figure out what could be like a structure which are able to self-develop, so I'm working also a lot with a lot of with scientific biologists, physicists, analysts, to try. So I really like to mix sound and other things, and that's what I'm doing, a lot of weird projects, because yeah, that's what I like.
The sense of being, quarantine and alone, it has like a very isolating experience. And I feel like this is like another extension of isolation through the lack of hearing that Ruben has. What's because you've had time away from this project now and you finished a while ago, when you look back at this film, what do you appreciate about just the journey of Ruben and the work that you did on it?
I think for me, what was great is to be able to also create the sound, the work of the sound on this film as an experience itself. Because also we start in Paris, in the very noisy Paris. So we went to LA in this like rock studio, and at the end, to finish the editing and to mix, we went to the mountain, the studio of Carlos Regadas, which is like the mountains in the pure silence. So for me also, what is important for me, it's also to create a journey for the director and for the team, because what I don't want, it's like, sometimes I think you spend a lot of time as a director, you write the script, it's very long, there is a shooting, it's very tiring, then after there is a picture editing, which is so important structurally wise, and then after sometimes you come in a room and there is a guy with a mouse clicking, on the Pro Tools, and sometimes it's not very sexy. So for me also, what is important for me is also like to say to the directors that it's not over, it's still continue, the journey is not finished, we still have a lot of things to try, a lot of things to experience, and that's for me the most important. And I do believe that on this film, because of Sacha Benaroche, which was the producer, who totally understood that idea and who permit us to actually try to do this journey all together, And so I'm now what I know that and this is totally coherent with the meaning of the film, Also, because the film is a kind of initiatic film, it's also a journey, And I think for me the more and more important is to try to also make when I work on a film, I want to make it like something amazing and you will never forget, So that's and for me, so all the human aspect and all these aspects are somehow even more important than the sonic aspect, because sound aspect, it's my work, it's all something I've been working on since 30 years. So my job is I'm still experimenting all the time, on my side to actually all the new tools or everything, But when I work with the director, I don't want to speak about technique. I just want to, to express feeling, ideas, emotion, and my work is to actually do, find the sound which are corresponding to that, and I really like to work with directors about we exchange books, we exchange music, we exchange photos, It's really like something maybe in a way more conceptual and some in a way more sensitive, that the actually usual let's say storytelling, So the storytelling is there, is strong, but the idea is also to open, the field, to open the territory, to be able to weave this, more layers together, and that's the work I'm trying to do, and so I think when you are able to create that environment where you can work closely with people, actually maybe even if it's not like astonishing, it's working very well because it's deeply, it's deeply written, and it's deeply. It can be very simple, but it's effective because it's not only illustrative. That's what I try to do.
I love how you just explained that, because I can tell that you had a lot of time. I mean, you've been doing this now for many years, but even so, you understand your own aesthetic, your own approach, your own process, which I just love to draw. You know, that you're able to share that. I feel like a lot of people aren't given a film or a subject or a story that would allow them, you know, that leans into that type of thought process. I'm just thinking that, you know, when a film like this, when it's called Sound of Metal and it's about someone who is a musician, someone who is deaf and just, you know, hearing is a character, it's not very often that we have that be
No, no,
yeah.
I think I feel totally blessed because Darius proposed me this film. You know, it's a bit like if you're a costume designer and if you are doing the wedding of the Queen Elizabeth, you know that everybody will see the dress, you know, and we'll have a look at the dress you know. So of course it's quite. I think we're doing a lot of work in a lot of films, but sometimes it's very. I mean, it's very it's a discreet, or it's very, you don't really see it, you know. It's not nobody. And then of course the topic of this film is sound. So everybody is naturally discover, that there is sound. Like my grandmother is 100 years old today, and when I said, I used to say to her that I'm doing sound in films, she looked at me all the time and said, but there is sounds in film.
Right.
So she thinks that it's, you know, nobody questions that.
Your grandma is not alone. We're talking about like a majority of movie goers who are unaware of the creative process, that yes, there are people who are thinking about sound, who are actively making suggestions, you know, for the audience to subtly pick up on. And I think yeah, this film is kind of like, it's up there. It reminds me also of like The Conversation, you know, Francis Ford Coppola's film. I mean, was that did that play into this at all, of like a point?
I mean that's one of the masterpiece.
Yeah, Walter Murch, I mean, did the sound, and
yeah. We had a talk like 3 years ago, 6 years ago, at Sound of School of Sound together, and it was amazing. I mean, of course, for me, I think him and Ben Burt are my, like, you know, like my gurus.
Yeah, sure.
More like him about the idea of maybe the more conceptual aspect of it, and the way that also, because he's a picture editor, so the idea of being able to control the picture and the sound, and understand that it's all you know, you can't separate sound from everything. It have to be, you know, together with all the other elements. And maybe Ben Bird, because of the crazy experimental aspect, and the fact that also everything I'm doing most of the time, but because in the film it's digital, the implants, I use that digital processing, but I really try to do everything acoustically most of the time, you know. So most of my setup in a recording room, I use a lot of old device, tubes, you know, metal sheet, like a lot of things who will bring me a reverb or distortion or weird effect or delays, you know.
Just
so I'm really
different
like,
sound textures, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's never twice the same thing, you know. That's what I like, you know. When I use, of course, I use plugins sometimes when I have to go to work and do things quickly. But if I, you know, for the main things, I'm always going back to the studio and to the recording and mic techniques and you know, like in the 60s, you know, 50s, 60s. When you see in Abbey Road how they were actually the session, and how they were prepared the session, and how they were modified the preamps, the microphone, how they were doing like this crazy echo chambers and so on.
Well, we come from a generation who had 1 foot in analog and 1 foot in digital, so we're very fortunate to carry both, you know, skill sets. I think that's a big aspect of this. Yeah.
When I start to work, I was working on 16 or 35 millimeter tapes, you know, and I was doing, my first job was doing the bias, you know, and now like every day I got a Pro Tools, but I still have an Agra, I still have you know, a lot of all gear around me. I like to work with.
You're not alone. You're not the only person who likes to have gear around them. I mean, a computer and being in the box is obviously where we're at today. Just to wrap things up, is there anyone else in your crew and your sound team that you want to acknowledge?
Of
And
course, no, of course, there is. I mean, like, first there is my assistant Carolina, which is actually a teacher in Abbey Road. She really helped me a lot to do like a proper good music editing, you know, because it was really a lot of work to do that, to make it really perfect. So we spent a lot of time with this first sequence, and she did like an amazing job on that and all the dialogue. And she also, because I was so busy about everything, that when I decide like how things need to be processed for the end of the film, she did it, you know, she prepared everything. The other guy, which is absolutely amazing, because I was a Foley artist. For me, it's very hard to work with Foley artists.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
But Eiki Kosi, who did Ad Astra, you know,
Mhm.
and he's amazing. So I had the chance. We did like some concert together, and I had the chance to go in Finland in his studio, and we spent like a week to share our techniques, and he's a for me, the best performer is the best performer. So I think to be able to combine my techniques, you know, my mic techniques with his performance, for me was to be able to get like the best of the Foley possible. So we had him, and we had also Carlos Cortez, which were like who did the first pass, you know, on the mix, and we had a couple of amazing re-recording mixer, Jaime Blasch and Mitch Kutelenk, which are from Mexico. They mix Roma also, and they mixed all the film of Carlos Regadas, and he's very good, and I love him because he's really like kind of old-fashioned recording mixer, a bit like same generation of Tom Johnson. I love these people because they really have this feeling, they like performance, you know. So they really like, they don't like you know, 1 second and 2 seconds and 5 seconds, you know. They really go for, you know, 1 minute, 2 minutes of mixing, you know, and they come back, you know. They have this, and I really think that for this film, because it's also speaking about the music and about live music, it was very important to have this kind of aspect in the mix. And Jaime did have these things, you know. I really appreciate with this generation of mixer. Of course, he is very good, so he knows all the new tools and blah blah blah. But he has this thing, you know, which is very engaged, you know, in physically in the way he's mixing, you know. So I mean, like I was very lucky, and I had the chance to be able to put all these people together, these people I really like. And that's now it's more or less it's a team I want to keep. It's not always possible because of the schedules, because of the money, but like for me these people are amazing. Of course we have also a lot of great people in France. So but I was very lucky, and I think now Darius and we all want to continue with the same team for the next project.
Yeah, sounds like it was a lot of fun. I mean, I was just looking back at the schedule. I mean, I guess it first played at the Toronto Film Festival in September of last year of 2019. It seems like an incredible journey that you guys have been on, and now the film is going to finally come out. So I'm just excited for people to see it and hear it, and yeah, it's you know.
I think we know that it's not going to be easy, but I mean, it also this film is also about truth, you know. So I think to tell the truth, you know, so and to accept the truth, and to and so I think that was very important for us to be really happy with it, and not to think about how the people will think about it, but more about how we think it's right for us to do it, you know.
That's yeah. I mean, that's a great reminder of, you know, I think why we enjoy what we do, and the reward and the contributions. I mean, I feel like your contribution is a huge pivotal. Like I was saying, there's not many films that allow sound designers and the sound teams to be part of the storytelling process in this way. So I just feel like For anyone who hasn't heard about this film, go check it out. And I just
But I would say that the new generation of directors, they are much they are like I think that also because of the there is so much picture, you know, like in this world. There is so much, you know, people are sometimes you know, that even I think also one of the aspects why the people like so much to listen to podcasts, you know, now these days, because there is no picture anymore, so they can, you know, relax a bit. Because so I think also like all the new generation of kids and new young director and young musicians, they are in their mind, you know, it's more balanced, you know, it's so people, I mean, like I have a lot of film where people now call me before the DOP, you know, so it never happened before. So before we were like, oh, we should have a sound editor.
Yeah.
Have a sound editor,
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
I think it's obvious now, like people can look at your track record and understand and other people's work and say, oh, the impact of the sound team, the impact of an individual who focuses solely on sound in this way and with this perspective can elevate all the visual crafts. We are not a separation of, you know, like church and state here.
I would say just to finish that actually I was 13 years old and I had an experience. They were showing a small documentary about how you do sound on films, and they were showing a shot, and they were like, it was a boat lying on the sound, and they putting it with seagulls. Then after only the seagulls, then only the wave sounds, and only the kids, you know. And it blew, you know, and I understood that my pleasure is not about sound; is about how interaction between picture and sound, and even more about how I can affect picture, you know, with sound. So I think it's totally linked, you know, and for me it's impossible to separate them.
The two, yeah. So where can people follow your work or stay in touch with you? Are you very active online, social media when you're not working?
No, I'm not very active, you know. I'm
That's not a bad thing. It's okay. You don't have to be. I'm just curious.
No, I mean, like, you know, like I think I've been like maybe 3 times in my entire life in a festival, you know. So
yeah.
So most of the time when I have time, I prefer to go and do music with friends, or you know, or go in the forest with my kids and pick up mushrooms,
Okay.
you know, like
yeah.
I
There are
think
other
that-
things to do. I understand.
Yeah, and I think also for me, nature is still very important. So for me, you know, sometimes I prefer to go in a environment I never been in, you know, to a desert or to, you know, at the very high mountain, or, you know, for me, I like to renew myself, you know. I don't know if you can say that, but through nature and through experience I have in nature. For me, it's also talk to my senses, you know, and it's always it's never predictable. So for me, it's my best reservoir of ideas and is life and nature.
That sounds like a pretty good social network, just outside in nature and with your family and children. Well, Nicolas, thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited for people to check out this film. Like I said, it's going to be on Amazon Video through Amazon Studios. Yeah, thank you again, and I'm excited to see what's next. Yeah.
Thank you.